Now, I am quite familiar with the names Sigmund Freud and C.S. Lewis, but what I did not realize is how the two intertwined, nor did I realize how the two intertwined with other names that are quite famous in the realm of pop culture, such as J.R.R. Tolkien, Churchill, and a few other names off the top of my that I've misplaced off the top of my head. I know that Sigmund Freud is important when it comes to the realm of medical. He was one of the founding people of human psychologists and analysis and understanding the way that humans present themselves with their mindset. I am not overly familiar with his daughter Anna Freud, who started Children's Analysts and the way that we perceive both mindsets within various age steps of humanity. But watching Freud's last session, it is more like watching two people not quite overly, not quite overly obsessed with the medical terminology, but rather the battle of faith versus science. It may not be the first discussion that we know of within faith versus science, because we know that to this day, to this generation, that is a topic of discussion regardless of whether you believe it or not. It is also a battle of atheism versus Catholic. It's a battle of human psychosis and brilliance of a man who does not quite disagree, but nor does he quite agree with it. He is open to interpretation, but also knows that this is the way I think, and we can agree to disagree. Watching this movie, it's portrayed as Sigmund Freud, who is Anthony Hopkins, as his last conversation before 3 weeks later killing himself with the help of assistance from his doctor, so assisted suicide, which again is a topic of discussion regardless of which country you're in. This movie is definitely not for everybody, I will admit that, because it is so heavy with this dialogue and it is primarily focused in one location. But it is very interesting in the way that it plays with each other and the way that it plays with the balance between Lewis and Freud. It plays with flashbacks that you have to purposely pay attention to, because it flashbacks to both these young men at various points in their life and then who they are in between their discussions. It also shows you that Freud is open to the idea of homosexuality and lesbianism, but also understands that two gay men are different to two gay women. The fact that apparently lesbianism is to do with the fact that a woman has father issues, whereas two gay men, it's only natural. While also keeping in the mindset of men and women are tradition, but humanity has always been bisexual, which I think is a very interesting discussion to have, because when you look at people like Sigmund Freud, you don't see 2 + 2. You kind of go, how do you get from there to this? Knowing that our traditional roles are men and women, knowing our traditional roles are housewife and male breadwinner, traditionally. But this is set in the 1939, where it's the reign of Hitler, where it's the reign of men who are taking to those traditional male leads. It's definitely an open discussion. It's definitely one of those films that when you sit through it, you may need to see it more than once. And I was listening to people who walked out, because I sat in a session with 10 other people, and a couple of them said we have to see this again to understand it. And I think to some extent that is true, that you do have to sit through Freud's last session in order to understand it. But you also have to go in there with an open mind, not quite knowing who either of these men are. Yes, they are famous within pop culture and within medical literature, but they are also not as well known as people think they are. I mean, I know of C.S. Lewis, and I know of Sigmund Freud, but I don't know of them, if that makes sense. I also know that they're quite important within their profession, but I also don't know how important they truly are to each other. This movie is carefully balanced, like I say, between fiction and reality, between faith versus science. It's not necessarily the first discussion, but it is a discussion. It's definitely a brilliance of two minds at one, knowing full well that they're never going to see each other again. It's a very interesting movie to play with, and definitely a massive discussion to have, not just within the realm of beauty in film, but also the realm of reality. And I like it, but I also feel like there's a lot to be left open to discussion, and I think that's what this film purposely does. I mean, Freud discusses a lot of things, Lewis, discusses a lot of things. So Matthew Good and Anthony Hopkins both play the remaining leads, and they definitely balance with each other perfectly. That's what I don't say online.